Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Marcus. In today's video, we finally have it. It's the 100S GFX versus the GFX 50S2. This is going to be a long form video, you guys. I'm sorry it's so long, but I want this to be like your one-stop shop for everything that you had asked me. I'm going to put a lot of chapter points so you can go through and actually just skip to which points you want. You have to watch it all at one time, obviously. And so please like and subscribe if you're not already. I appreciate that. And I want to hear what you guys think. This is going to be just a lot of tests that you guys asked for. Raw files in the link below, so you can go ahead and download those and play with those as well. But I try to cover every single thing you asked for. Face detect, eye detect on both cameras, single shot, continuous, blackout time, high ISO and the noise, the dynamic range, underexposed, overexposed, the screen resolution, also the files that you can actually look at. And we're going to spend a lot of time at the end checking out these files and seeing if the 100S is missing the magic that the 50S has. I have my thoughts on that, but I want you guys to comment and actually let me know what you think. Is it worth the extra money for the 100S in your opinion after watching this or not? I'm going to kind of stay out of the way with my opinions on this unless something is like genuinely fact to me. And at the end I'll give you my commentary and kind of see where I'm at with it, which one I think is better for me, and if I'm still on the fence. So big thanks to Fuji and Dan over at Fuji for getting me this loaner copy out. Again, I'm totally unbiased here. I own the 50S too, and I'm not trying to sell you guys any camera. There's no affiliate links. The only thing I asked is that you watch my pre-roll here with the my class that's on sale this week for Black Friday and Thanksgiving, $25 off, and then hop right into the video. So just take your time and flip through it. It's going to be a long one. Alright, love you guys. Please go to ProPhotoEdits.com where you can download my Lightroom presets and Photoshop actions. And I just want to remind you guys that my online creative lighting and editing course is up right now. I get asked about this every single day on Instagram. If you're not following me, the link will be down below. But how do you get these in-camera effects? I don't do any of this in Photoshop. This is all done in camera. So I put 12 courses in here, 12 different photo shoots, and I explain what tools I use to get these looks in camera. And I usually just use one light. Sometimes I use one light and one LED, but I don't have a dynamic lighting setup. Everything you're looking at here right now is explained in the course. We're over, I think, 300 or 400 people in the course right now, so it's really growing and people are really happy with this. And we've just added some extra things that you're looking at right now with the light throwing technique, all done in camera. So you get the raw files, the Lightroom presets, the Photoshop actions, screen recording. I have me editing these looks that you're looking at now, and I've also included a new creative gelling course to get you these looks like this in camera. So consider that. Okay, so let's hop right into eye autofocus between both cameras. I'm turning eye autofocus on. This is on the 50S2, and I have the 110 on there right now, and I'm just going to show you how it works, or why I don't use it very much on the 50S2. You see, it's trying to come, there it goes, it's coming back into the frame trying to find the eye, but it's so slow. And you know, a lot of people like to move fast. It's reality. People want to pose, people want to move. I mean, if you were trying to shoot anything with any type of movement, and I'm talking about, I'm just micro movements. She's not going forward and backwards, just like moving her head side to side a little bit. And this is one of my fastest lenses, so it's not really that great at all. So I'm gonna put it into continuous now just for giggles, because a couple of you asked me to put it in continuous and do high speed burst rates on there and just see if it tracks at all. I gotta walk in towards the camera just a bit. all those shots are going to be out of focus. We'll check them here in a second just to make sure, but that's why I never use it like this. I use my 50S2 in single point all the time, and I'll show you how that performs in another portion of this video. See, I completely lost her there. Continuous AF on the 50 series, S2, the 50 any series is just turn it off. You know, that's not what this camera is about. So I want to set this over to the 100S in a second, and give you time to talk you through this, turning that AF off on the 50S2. Now I'm hopping into, very surprisingly, the 100S with the 81.7 continuous. All right, we're gonna watch what I do here. Face detect on, auto eye, okay. High speed burst mode. Now watch this. I just have her barely coming towards the camera at all. And all these frames it's taking, alright? And it's actually showing that it's tracking the eye. Pretty impressive. I mean, I asked her to walk as slow as you possibly could, so don't think that you're going to shoot anything sports with this. And we're going to check these in a second to see if it actually hit, alright? And I know, see, it kind of did a little hiccup there. But it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But as you can tell, that was 100 times better. Now, let's look at it and still, you know, single shot mode with just face the eye detect on. Same as what we were doing with the 50S2, and you can see it just it's a lot stickier. You know, she can move around just a touch. I feel like the blackout is a little bit faster, less blackout, and I don't know if I can trust this yet, but I know on camera it's telling me that it's working, right? I wouldn't necessarily use it like this because it makes me nervous, but I can tell that it's actually trying, you know. It's trying to find the eye, and if it doesn't, it'll get popped back to it pretty quickly without having to rack back and forth. Now I'm moving closer now, right there, found it again. We're going to look at these shots in a second. See, it kind of got stuck on the face there, so it's not perfect. It's not Canon level. But you guys know that. We'll compare the R5 to this just for the people that ask, which is kind of unfair, but in the next video. But one more look at this. I want to show you how good the eye detection is on the 100S versus, and this is in continuous. This is pretty impressive. I just want you to see this one more time. Walking towards the camera, high speed. It doesn't look like it's giving up on her, all right? This may be the best case scenario that you could get. I wouldn't actually use it like this, but it's trying, you know. I mean, it could be usable in some scenarios, but I generally wouldn't do that. Okay, guys, so now for the results. Let's start with the 50S2 first. And I've already looked at these, and I'm actually surprised. Even though the eye autofocus was not really telling me that it was working, you know, it wasn't the GUI readout just wasn't like perfect. It was better than I thought. If we go in on a lot of these images, you can tell that's sharp. Now, the 100 f2 has not quite of a shallow depth of field. You can tell it didn't really get that one okay. But a lot of these shots, it was just not really showing any data on the screen at all. Hit that one. Completely back focus on that. That's what you kind of get sometimes. It'll just have to re-rack. Okay, missed that one. So that's why I don't use it, because I can't necessarily just pray, hit that one. I can't necessarily just pray that it's going to work right. And on the 81.7 on the GFX 50S2, that is pretty sharp. I would not, it's a slower lens, so, and plus it has shallower depth of field if you're shooting it wide open. If you were stopped down, you got the front eye there, good. So even though it was looking kind of janky on the screen, it wasn't really showing that it was tracking or sticking, and it might show that it's landing somewhere else. That one's completely out of focus, okay. And then the very next shot, back. Now I'm shooting slower, as you saw just a minute ago. That one's got the eyebrows, but it's close. This is out of focus. So even though it's not really giving you a good readout, that's perfectly sharp on the eyes. It is good, sharp. It is doing its thing as good as it can. And we're going to see that with the 100S here in a second. That's perfect. He's got this eye right here. Now these files I haven't touched at all. These are completely straight out of the camera, Adobe Color, no presets, no anything. We're going to get into comparing files later on in this video, because everyone seems to think that the 50S series and the 50 autofocus, the 50 series has some magic to its files that the 100S and the 100 does not, and we're going to see. This is perfect. Okay, so we've kind of got the gist of it right there. As long as they're not going crazy, it seems to work. All right. I would just turn on single point and turn continuous off. We're going to see how continuous works in just a second, because with single point, you're always going to want the person somewhere it's similar in the frame, right? Autofocus sometimes can make you lazy framing wise. Like, I like to center people, or if I don't want them centered, I want them in a specific place. Oh, it missed. Alright, so you kind of get the gist of it. Alright, so here's where she starts to come towards the camera. Continuous on. Alright, so let's see. Second shot is already out. Alright. Let's see. Yeah, so continuous. I'm just going to keep them all zoomed in like this. No, it's a no-go. With the highest burst rate I can do on the 50S2. It just it doesn't have phase detect, right? So that's not going to work. I tried one more burst with this and continuous, and you can see it's trying its best. Out of focus. Out of focus. Out of focus. It can't do it, guys. So I still love the camera. I just never put it in this mode because of this. Why would I do that? I prefer single point anyway, because I always have the person right where I want them. So there's the wrap up for the 50S2. Don't do it in continuous. It's not worth it. Just single point, single shot, and you'll be good. Alright guys, so let's look at the 100S files, and this is what the different lens, this is the 81.7, the 100S, and I have it in continuous, highest speed. I got a really fast card in there, and eye autofocus. So what we just saw with the eye autofocus, to see what it does actually in comparison with the results. Alright, so she's barely moving towards the camera, as you saw. It's not like a sprint. It's not even like a fast walk. So let's see. And these are going to take longer to load because they're huge files, okay? So the first one's in. Comes a little closer. Second one, it seems in. That one's still not loaded. It seems in. There's a lot. This is 1.7, so it's not apples to apples. See how long these are taking to load? That's in. That's in. This is pretty impressive for something that I would only use in a pinch. Just, you know. That is in. Alright, so from all the way from out there. So we're also zooming in further here now, right? Because these are, you know, 100S files. So two things. More megapixels, more room for error because you can zoom in farther, right? 1.7 lens and a slower lens at that. A lot more room for error. So I have to say that with the IAF on this and perfect conditions, let it load, I'm pretty impressed. Plus you're shooting more frames per second. You need a really fast card for it not to bog up. This is pretty impressive, guys. Her eyes are closed there, but next shot. I'm gonna skip ahead a few. That's in, just because let's get her closer. Go to the next one where she's getting closer. Her eyes are closed. Alright, so let's go to the very next one. Let's see. You got that eye, you know. That's pretty impressive from back there, that it got any eye at all with 81.7. Next shot. See, these take a while to load. These are big files. These are like 200 megabytes. Got that eye, you know. So it is getting something. Like 2 more shots here, and then we'll have our answer. We already have our answer, but just want to see, did it miss any? It did. It missed that one. Okay, so it missed a couple, I would say. And this is with the slow walk. It got the back eye there. Okay, so I wouldn't necessarily trust this. She started back here, this far away, you know, and ended right here with like, I don't know, I'd say about 20 shots in one burst. And I think it missed like 3 of them at 1.7. That's really good. That's pretty incredible, actually. So I would say the 100S eye autofocus works, but I still probably wouldn't use it that much just because it still scares me. All right, so let's just see how eye autofocus works, face detect and single shot really quick, so we can see if you're not doing any type of continuous with the 100S. All right, that's a lot of resolution. That's tack sharp. Go to the next one. She has her eyes open. Now she was moving just a little bit, right? And then we're back with the 110 right now. That's sharp. If your subject's not moving, autofocus may be usable. When I mean moving, I mean not moving forward and backward towards the camera. If they're just stationary and you wanted to use autofocus, I still would probably use single point because it gives me a better ability to just keep them exactly where I want in the frame. Yeah, this is looking really good. Small sample size, you guys. You know, there's going to be some places where problem. Now this is crap light. You know, this is just overcast. Didn't get any sunset on this day, but these files look to be in focus most of the time. Let's just jump around. Let's choose a random file. Takes a while to load because they are huge, but they are beautiful. Man, that's really good. That's impressive. We'll look at the 50S2s here in a second and see what we got. So let's go here closer and see close up. It got it right there. You can see it's out of focus over here. Impressive. All right, so wrapping up with the IAF thoughts. On the 100S, it's incredibly impressive to me. I was not expecting that. The continuous IAF on the slow lens like the 1.7 80 millimeter, it tracked and it tracked well. Only missed like 2 shots out of 20. That was pretty impressive. Now you need an incredibly fast card. It's moving a lot of data at once. A single point, or single shot eye autofocus on the 100S, totally usable. I probably wouldn't use it just because I like to frame my person in the middle. Single point is just the way I like to move on these cameras. And totally impressed. You can just say that I wasn't expecting that. Better than I thought it would be. I still just not an eye autofocus user on these GFX cameras. On the 50 series, keep it out of continuous. Never put it in continuous autofocus. The 50S2 that I have even has rapid AF mode, so it makes it snappier. You'll see in a second when you're doing single shot. I would not use AF and single shot on the 50S2 either, just because there's really no reason to. Just keep your focus point where you want it, take the shot, and you'll be good to go. So that's my stance on. So for this part of the test, we're going to do focusing speed. Single shot, no eye detect, nothing like that. I'm going to do focus to infinity and back on both bodies. Blackout, you can check for blackout. I think blackout is kind of like a wash, to be honest with you. And then we're going to just see how each camera performs through the lens. But I want you to pay attention to one thing here. Look how crystal clear the screen is on the 100S when I start snapping, and then look how bad it is on the 50S2. I've been dealing with that for a while on the 50 series, but here's the 100, okay? You can see every time it gets focused, it acquires it really quick, and this is with the 1.7. I'm not going to infinity and back yet. Okay, now I'm just same lens, same setup. Now pay attention to 2 things. Okay, this is the thing you deal with without phase detect on the 50S2. It stutters. So I'm missing moments here, right? because I want to take that picture. I want to take the other picture, but it has to hunt, get it, hunt, get it. And do you see how grainy and like heavy contrast and just degraded the screen looks? That makes me not want to use the camera as much. Now back to this kind of looks like my R5 screen, right, on the 100S. And of course it's acquiring focus quicker, so I can take the picture quicker. I don't think the blackout is much better. It might be a little bit better, maybe not. It's just the time in between where I have to do that, and now it kind of finds it. But what time it finds it, she might have moved a little bit. So that's the thing I'm always struggling with the 50, even in Rapid AF, and just this contrast thing that's going on in the grainy screen. It makes me, because the files coming out of it look beautiful, both bodies, but it makes me not want to use it. If I'm looking at the screen, I'm constantly have to remind myself that these files are going to look great. Don't pay attention to what the screen looks like. That's kind of a downer. Here's the infinity and back on the 100S. Pretty quick, right? I'm doing this good job. Alright, now here's on the 50S too. It's not super terrible. Rapid AF is on. The screen still looks terrible, and I see you run into that sometimes, and that's just life with the 50S2, 50 series cameras in general. Files are beautiful, but it does feel kind of archaic. Back to the 100S, you can see it just kind of gets out of your way, I guess, is the main point I'm trying to drive home. The 50S2 gets in my way a little bit. I use it because the files are incredible, but when I was using the 100S, it just felt like a weight was lifted off me, like the camera got out of my way and I could do what I wanted to do. Alright, so let's do some low light focusing tests. This is the 50S2 right here, and we're just outside of my studio, and you know, at 2.8, we're going to use the 45mm 2.8 on both bodies, and just see how they perform apples to apples. You'll notice that there's noise in the frame right now because that's just the resolution of the LCD, and I'll harp on that a bit more when I take it in my basement, even darker, and why it just frustrates me a lot, knowing that the files are going to be beautiful. But take a look. It's not doing terrible. It has the, you know, the pulsing going on, and it's not like super dark in there, but you need a lot of light at 500 shutter speed and a 2.8. Now you can see that it does struggle a little bit on, you know, darker things, darker areas. When I turn the preview off, you'll actually see how much of a low light scenario this is. So that's what it actually is to the camera. It's almost pitch black to the camera. So of course I turn preview mode on so I can actually see, and the camera can see what's going on. I have it set to my one of my custom buttons so I can always get to it, and you can see it can struggle a little bit in the dark. I don't use it in the studio very much for that reason. If I had the 100S, Fuji, give me a deal on that, I'll take it. But if I had the 100S, I would actually use it in the studio a bit more, because one, I like to see what I'm going to get, not without a grainy screen, and two, I like to focus faster. Okay, so here's the 100S, and you can instantly tell every time it turns green, it's acquired focus. So it's not jumping at all. It's just has it. I just press the button and it has it. I'm at 640 on the shutter, and the ISO is a little bit lower, so I'll let you see. This is what the camera's seeing. It's pitch black in there to the camera, and it's still doing its thing. You know, with the preview on, you can see, you know, what you want to see. That's not what the actual frame's going to look like when it takes it, but it's not struggling at all, in my opinion. It's really doing a great job there. So I would say that the 100S in low light, for my tests, is head and shoulders above the 50S2, and I think we've already known this, but it's good to kind of see it actually working, so you can see how much better it is, and that it doesn't really hiccup much, which is good, you know, because this isn't like totally a low light scenario, but here we are in the basement and this is low light. Okay, this is the 50S2, and I'm just going back and forth here, and you can just see that's what happens when you have contrast detect. I'm used to it from this older technology, but pay attention to the graininess. And when I scroll over and when I pan over with my camera here, sorry, I'm talking over footage here, so I'm kind of like trying to figure out what I'm gonna do next that I did actually in the camera. So I want you to see this. Look how crazy the screen looks. It looks like an old TV with the antennas up. You see that? It turned magenta, and it does that whenever there's low light. And you know, this is the kind of what, with preview off, this is what the camera's actually seeing. So it's not the darkest place in the world. I have the shutter speed way down at 15, so you know, I'm letting in as much light as I can. I would never take that picture there, even with the good IBIS. But just for giggles, I want you to just look at this. Look, this makes me not want to use, and I own this camera. I love the files out of this, but this is one of the things that frustrates me. The screen is so bad whenever there's not enough light. Even when there is good light, it's not good like the 100S, and definitely not my R5, and that just makes me not want to use it much. Look, okay, that's about how much light is in the frame now in reality to the camera. Okay, shutter speed 500, I've really bumped it up. Now look at this. When I pan over, look at that gray thing on the wall. It's like turns rabbit ears on the TV. All the color is gone. The grain is out of control. Now watch the 100S in the same exact scenario. See how that just cleaned up? You know, you can watch it. It struggled a little bit, and this is incredibly dark in here right now. 800 on the shutter, but it's doing pretty decent. And I'm not even going like on something that's super contrasty. It's just the highlights on here, and it's finding it pretty well. But look, there's not a bunch of grain on there. It's just a little bit, but it's not crazy like it was before. It's actually something where I can actually look at the file and say, okay, I know how that's gonna look. It's not messing with my mind telling me that the file is gonna suck, when in actuality it's not gonna suck. It just gets out of my way, and it was a joy using it. And that's about how dark it was, and the camera was still focusing. So kudos. Okay, everybody, so let's get into looking at some of these files, and I'm gonna walk you through each one. We're gonna do high ISO files, completely underexposed, completely overexposed, dynamic range test, latitude test, and then we're gonna get into the elephant in the room, which is the colors. And just the overall vibe of the sensors. Now I can tell you they're different, and I'm gonna give you all these files and a bunch more raw files to download in the description, so you can play with them yourself, and different programs, and see what you actually think, because I'm just gonna let you make up your mind and leave your comments down below, because this is subjective, and I will give you my opinions and my thoughts at the end here. But let's go ahead and start with the ISO shots, and then we'll see which camera has better ISO. Alright, so I'm gonna start here, and everything with 1 star is GFX 50S2, and I'll annotate it on the screen, and everything with 2 stars is going to be the 100S. Alright, so I started here, and this is ISO 4000, and then I went up to 10,000, because if you need any more than 10,000, you probably need a light. So let's go in here on the GFX 50, and I'll pump this up to where we're getting in pretty close here. And you can see, download this and check it out yourself, because you know YouTube may mess it up a bit, but that's really clean on the 50S2 for 4000. I remember back, you know, when the original A7R came out, I couldn't put it past like 500 or it would be unusable. This looks like maybe ISO 300 on something from back then, but no noise reduction on. You know, this is just straight out of camera, and I pull the exposure down just a little bit, but there's not really any artifacts in her hair or anything like that. The grain looks nice and soft. Very, very usable file. Okay, and then we'll compare both. So this go into ISO 4000 on the GFX 100S. Same settings. Now, nothing. Let's pull the exposure down a little bit and go in here. These files take a little longer to load. Looks really good on my end. I mean, this is a 100 megapixel sensor, and you can tell that the grain is smaller. And there might be a little bit more of it, but I think you're splitting hairs for a 100 megapixel sensor to perform this good, this well, I should say, is really, really incredible to me, because I wasn't expecting that. Didn't degrade the file at all. Okay, that's ISO 4000, and you can download these and play with them yourself. Okay, so now let's go back into ISO 10,000. GFX 50S2. Now you're starting to see, and I'll go in here even further. Please go to 100, 100, 200. I don't care, just go. Alright, so you see we're pretty far in there, right? And that's a lot of grain, but it's just for printing a picture, you know, to hang on your wall or something like that, 8 by 10. I don't think it'd be that bad. And 10,000 for me on a GFX is like, I don't know why you'd be that high. If you turn the noise reduction up a little bit, it'll soften the image a bit, but like I said, for printing, it would be totally fine. But we're just gonna look at it without that, and look at the size of the noise, the grain of the noise. Still a very usable file in my opinion. Alright, so let's go to the 100S, ISO 10,000, and then we'll go in here, and you can see I think the grain is a little more pleasant on the 100S. I think it's kind of a wash. Like, for this much resolution, this is really good. You know, I'm not seeing anything wild here out, you know, other than what you'd expect. The grain, I guess there's more because the pixels are smaller, maybe. I don't know, but just looking at this from this far away, how would you guess that I shot that ISO 10,000? That's really, really good. And like I said, if you want to turn the noise reduction up a little bit, sure, it softens the image, but it's almost gone, you know. Very impressed with both bodies. I don't know if there's a clear winner here. You know, you have to download them and check them out and see if you think the black is losing a little bit of something on the 100, but I really don't think there's a clear winner there. I think they both perform exceptionally well. Maybe bigger grain on the 50S2 and smaller, more grain on the 100S, but to your eyes, which one is more pleasing? I don't know. You have to check it out, but they're both incredible in the ISO regards. Okay. Alright, so now let's get into the dynamic range test, and I'm going to show you where I started out. And this is a 1-star image. This is a GFX 50S2. Reset this. Pretty much black. If you miss a shot by this, this much, you know, shame on you, shame on me. You know what I mean? There's really no excuse, but we're just testing this out. Alright, so I'm gonna put it back to what I did with it. And the only thing I did was highlights down, shadows up to 100, whites up to 75, blacks up to 39, because I know a lot of people said, you know, when I test these out, I just pull the exposure up, and that's more of like a latitude test. So we're gonna try to push everything to see dynamic range wise. Alright, so that's pretty good. I mean, that's very good. It's better than contrast wise and everything that stays in the image, the colors. That's just using Adobe Color Profile. That's actually really good in my opinion for something that, you know, is still a usable shot for sure. You could edit this, you know, and start pushing stuff around. I don't really see many artifacts at all. The colors still nice, and that was, you know, pushed all the way from there to here. And I'll probably be able to compare these more than I will be able to compare the ones that were on the GFX 100S, just because they take longer to load in compare mode. So this is a 100S file, all right, and see it started there, pretty much the exact same exposure. I'm using the same lenses here too, so there's not going to be any. This is the 110 f2, and I did the exact same thing. Highlights down 78, shadows up to 100, whites up to 75, blacks up to 54. I mean, these might be a little bit different for each camera because I'll talk about this later in this little portion of this video about the actual files and how they differ raw straight out of the camera. So you can see still a very, very, very usable file. I mean, we're going in farther now because this is a lot more resolution on this actual, it's twice. It's 2 times the resolution. It's incredible. Very usable file. The colors are still there. I'm really blown away by these, in a sense of just how incredibly good they are. So let's put them in compare mode and see if anyone can find that big of a difference here. So GFX 5100, sorry, GFX 100S on the left, 2 stars. GFX 50 S2 on the right, 2 stars. Sorry, 1 star. I'll annotate it. I can't really tell that one of them is, now that they're loaded, well, actually the GFX 100S file. That's why I'm not going to do a bunch of these compared side by side. I'm giving you the files because the 100S files take forever to load, and this video is already going to be long. In compare mode, it's trying to load them both. I swear this image is sharp. You just saw it. But just look at them side by side. You're going to notice through the course of me playing all these files that the 50 S2 files always have more contrast no matter what, but they also have more of a magenta shift. Is that combination together, a little bit of a magenta shift and more contrast, what gives them their so-called magic pop? I don't know. We're going to get into that in just a few minutes, but you cannot use the same presets on both. They look totally different. I understand why people say they buy this camera and say the 100S and say I didn't like it at first, or I had to totally learn how to re-edit my files. I do think the 100S files are always a little bit more open and airy, and the 50 series files are more punchy, contrasty, and that. So for underexposed to that, you still retain a lot of colors, and I think that was, a kind of a wash. You guys tell me. I don't shoot and try to recover like that very often at all. We'll get into where I normally shoot here in a sec. Okay, so let's go back into some of the overexposed files here, and then I'll show you. Alright, so 50S2, and we're just going to do this together. We're just going to do like latitude on this 50S2, pulling down, and that's pretty exposed. You can see all pretty overexposed. All the data is up here. It's all here. Now pulling it back down, the file is, without doing anything else, is starting to look just like a raw file. It's really incredible. I can get away with pushing the highlights on these bodies like no other body I've ever shot before. And I say bodies plural because they're both really good. So from going from there to there on the 50S2, I mean, you could still pull your shadows up. You probably have to add a little bit of vibrance back in there. But that's incredible to me. I mean, and that's goofy overexposed. And she has on a white shirt. So 50S2 does really well with that. Let's check out how the 100S2 does. Pretty overexposed. Let me see if I have one that's a little bit more overexposed here. Yeah, okay. There we go, into goofy territory. Super overexposed on the 100S. Pulling it down. That's getting back into usable territory. And I think this one might be a little bit more overexposed than the last. So if it's hard to nail that, getting them exact same exposure in camera, just trying to, because the same settings really don't apply apples to apples. File still looks great. I mean, the highlights are, you'd have to start pulling those down because she has highlights in the shirts and stuff like that. But this one right beside it is a little less goofily overexposed. It's pretty overexposed, but you can tell it really looks good. Just doing that, just pulling it down a little bit, pull the shadows up, pull the contrast up. I think they both do well being overexposed. I couldn't break either file. I mean, this one right here, I would say is the more broken of the two, because it's just like the most overexposed you could ever do. You should never be in a situation like that. Bring an ND filter or something. But yeah, I can't really pick a winner. I would just say that you download these raw files and check them out and see what you think. I'll categorize them in the Google Drive, the dynamic range shots, the ISO shots, and then just the color shots. They're both incredible. I'm not going to upgrade from one or downgrade to the other, or cross grade, whatever you consider it, because of dynamic range or noise. They're both beautiful in recovery. Okay, guys, so for this is going to be the longest portion, I think, of this, and I'm going to give you all these files, and I'm going to go through both my sons. I'm going to go through the model in two areas. One area that we've been kind of hanging out on most of this review, and then the other area with more color, down the other alley. So we'll be able to check out, and these are all natural light, obviously. I did some of those kind of more of a spotty, harsh light with my oldest son. Then I did one in the house with a bunch of colorful furniture with my youngest son, and then of course the model outdoors, overcast, in two different locations. And I'm going to try to see, I'm going to talk you through my thoughts, and I'm going to try to see if I can give you an example of what I think is different between the sensors, and if there's magic with one more than the other. Okay, so again, 1 star 50S2, 2 stars 100S, same lens, 81.7, just my son outside. This is what it looks like out of camera. Okay, and all I did was push a few sliders around and put it on profile camera pro negative high. I really like that one, and the files are really good. Look at Krusty, gotta wash that face. He's super cute though. This is what I've been used to seeing for a long time, right? This color scheme without doing much to it. Pull the highlights down, pull the shadows up. I didn't color grade it, pull the vibrance up, nothing. Very contrasty, kind of punchy file, right? 100S. I tried to match these as best as I could. Let's skip to one that's a little bit more of the same framing. Maybe here. He has trouble standing still, as you can see. Now, definitely more resolution, but I took a lot more shots because it's faster and easier to take shots. I will say that these files, if I just reset it, they're not as contrasty out of camera, right? And they don't have much of a magenta shift. The skin tones are a little bit more natural. 100S again. Let's just reset this. It's different because you're starting from a different point, and I tried to match them as well as I could. So we'll just put these side by side. And if I didn't tell you which one was which you already know, do you think there's more magic in one or the other? This is the 50S2 file on your right. This is the 100 S on the left. if I zoom in on these, are they going to actually load? I mean, the files themselves are incredible, but I don't know, it takes a while to match them to be similar, right? I couldn't tell you that, in my estimation on this particular point, and we're going to get to some where there's a clear, bigger difference, that I would be unhappy with any file. I kind of like the 50S2 file better here, but it could just be because I'm used to editing those better. And this is like a harsh light type of scenario, because I'm going to give you as much as I could of each, okay? Alright, he's not going to be too happy if I keep doing that. So, let's get into some of the model shots, alright? So, these aren't going to be apples to apples as far as, and we're going to start here, 100S raw file, and this is where it came from. And I couldn't just use my presets and copy and paste. I had to try to match. It's a totally different workflow. That is a very natural neutral file coming out of the 100S, right? I think it's beautiful. I think the shadows are pushed up a little bit more on this sensor. It's not quite as contrasty, not quite as colorful right out of camera. And I've noticed this almost every time I went from like say something like the D610 or the 750 to the D810. The RAWs were different. The RAWs were always more contrasty right out of camera on the lower resolution cameras, and a lot more airy and malleable on the higher resolution cameras. Now this is like a bigger example of this. So with pushing some stuff around on here, I mean, I got it to something like this, and I pushed it pretty hard, obviously, and I did use Camera Pro negative standard on there. I think the file is really good. I think it's a beautiful file. I wouldn't, like, I think there is magic there, right? But that's not the question. The question is there the same magic, right? So let's go over here to the 50S2 file and see, and we'll put them side by side. Straight out of camera, you can tell that's a more contrasty file. The shadows, there's not many shadows going on at all. It's a more colorful file. Is that better or worse? It's easier to edit, in my opinion, because and I did use, you know, the Adobe standard here, because they have sweet spots with both. Camera standard negative, you know, like this doesn't work as well on the 50S series, I don't find, you know. So this isn't apples to apples. I'm gonna tell you, if you have the 50S2 and you go up to the 100S, you're gonna have to redo all your presets and really get into split toning and camera calibration, because you're not going to have the same magenta shift here. Alright, so let's do two things. I'm going to copy this. I want this video to be as informative as possible. Sorry, it's going to be a little bit longer. I'm going to reset it. Okay, I'm going to go over to this file. I'm going to make a virtual copy of it, and I'm going to reset it. Now let's look at these two RAWs side by side without zooming in or anything, and see if you can see. Okay, less contrast, a little less color, more contrast, more color, but when you start to push, they change. There's just no other way to say that. And this isn't a very colorful scenario. Obviously, it's overcast, and I put her in a position where it's neutrals. So, and then if we go over here and go from to the one that I edited a bit, and then over here to the other one that I edited a bit. Now they switched on this. On the right hand side you have the 100S. On the left hand side you have the 50S2. is there certain magic to one than there is the other? I mean, this is totally crap light, so we're going to get into something with a little bit more a better light and push files a little bit better. But I think the skin tones are more natural on the 100S, you know, and I think the colors are a little bit more just overall pleasing, if I can say. I don't know. I'm trying hard to be objective here and not find the magic. You know what I mean? But this is a small sample size, and we're going to keep going until we find, you know, something that's a little bit better. And you'll be able to play with all these, and I'm going to overload you guys with files. So let's get a little bit closer here, and I push this file a lot. You know, you'll have these, you'll be able to mess with them, and just if you don't feel like editing them, I put a lot of color in there, right? Just because I want to see matching them as well as I could. And you'll have these, you can not push them as far as I did, but just something where I could try to see if one of them breaks first. And then I did the same thing over here on the 100S. Same lens, and I tried to put a little bit more magenta into the skin to try to match it better, and I'll show you where the files came from. Straight out of camera. I underexposed it a little bit so I didn't get the highlights in the sky, because it's better to underexpose than it is to overexpose, I found, just in general. And then we'll go back 50S2, and I'll put them side by side. 100S. I'm having trouble, guys, finding like the so-called term magic, right? And I own the 50S too. I want it to have that magic, and I think that it does have something that's not necessarily magic, but it's a there's a color shift that's very pleasing on the 50S2 that I think you can get to learning to edit on the 100S, and I think there's more contrast in the files. So 100S on the left, a little bit more open and airy, which I actually think looks great. And you can just look at the lips and see that they're a little bit more red, but there's not as many hues, different hues of red in them as there is over here on the 100S, because I guess maybe the 16-bit color thing. Don't know. I don't examine that far. I just see a photo and see if I like it or not. But tried to match these as well as I could in there. They were difficult. I had to spend a lot more time on the 100S file trying to get it to look like to try to replicate the magic from the 50S2 that people call it. I just think they look different, you know. And I mean, I obviously like the shot better on the 100S because it's just a better shot, you know. I'm not trying to wow anybody with photography here. I'm just trying to get the exact same lighting so I can have the files to edit together. I would say if you have a 100S, it's probably going to be a learning curve to try to replicate the workflow you've been going with the 50 series, because the sensors are different. But as you can see, I mean, I do this for a living, matching files. I mean, not matching, but making presets and stuff like that. So I had to go into a bunch of different things: the curves, the split toning, the camera calibration, to try to get them in a neutral, natural color. Now, this isn't natural, but more of the same color space that I like. You know, because it's important to me to know if I do want to upgrade, am I going to be able to live with it? And I found that you can match them, but it's going to be hard if you don't have them together at the same time to try to find that. You think you're going to be editing differently. I don't think some people, I mean, if you're a nitpicker, I'm just trying to see, is it placebo or not? And I'm still not 100% sure. This is a small sample size. You guys need to be okay with this on your end. I can't tell you that it is or it isn't, because it might be. 50S2 files are easier to edit, and that's something that I think for me is kind of important. But I think if you know how to get there, you can definitely get there with the 100S files. Okay, so I'm gonna give you a bunch of those, and I'll give you some of the outdoor ones too, but I wanna do something real quick here. with indoor with my other son, and I'm gonna try to show you exactly what I'm talking about as we wrap this up. Now, this is my younger son. All right, so I'm gonna do this two different ways. I'm gonna do like a one of the edits that I kind of like to do. This is just straight up raw file with pushing a couple things. Okay, Adobe Color, nothing crazy going on both cameras, and I'm gonna show you what I think the magic is coming from on the 50S2, the so-called magic that we all just got used to and loved the file wise. So if I reset this file, I want to do this in a way where everyone can see. Create virtual copy, go over here to this one on the 100S, create virtual copy, and okay, so I'm going to reset this one, and I'm going to reset this one because I spent a little bit of time trying to get these the same. All right, same lens, 45 2.8, both bodies, because I don't want there to be any weird, just taking 10 seconds apart from each other. He's watching the TV. Now if you go in here on the 50S2 file, and I had to have the ISO up to 2000, which is just indoor conditions with the 2.8, but it's a nice punchy lens, so I wanted to use it. There's the contrast, the color, everything is kind of there, right? And then I just pumped it a little bit and did a really boring, something that I wouldn't, just natural edit, right? Nothing going on. But notice that the contrast, I'm at 200%, there's no reason to be that high. The contrast is there. The kind of 3D just punchiness is there. Okay, so again, raw file, and I'll do these side by side here in a second. This is going to be a little bit longer. And reset this 100S file. Do you see the difference? Let's put this back down to 100% because that's way crazy going in that far. It's not as contrasty straight out of camera. It's just not. And the colors are more muted, as it's talked about in a few times, but the skin tone is a little bit more natural. He's super duper pale. That's just, my sons look totally different. And yes, I am the father of both. They're both beautiful boys. But you can tell that the file doesn't have as much contrast. And to get these to match, when I did match them as much as I could, I had to do some finagling here on the 100S. So before we do that, let's go over here and just look at them side by side, raw. Raw 50S2 on the right, raw 100S on the left. Punchier on the right, if it does load, but you just have to take my, and we're going in farther here, so it's showing if I was kind of just a little bit out of focus, I don't know, and it'll show more imperfections in focusing on the 100S, and that's a testament to how good it is, because this isn't about hitting the shot dead on right here, but this is more about just color science and raw files. But I didn't miss very many shots almost at all, as you've seen through this review on the 100S. I struggled, I didn't say struggled, I'd had to take 5 extra shots of him on here because kids are moving around when they're watching TV on the 50S2 to actually get the shot, which is what I've been dealing with for a long time, and what a lot of you probably are dealing with, wondering, is it worth going up? Am I going to lose the magic? So that's what the raw file difference is. Less colors, less contrast, less shadows, and over here a lot punchier, more contrast. Okay, so get out of compare, and then we'll go into the matching of both, right? In the very most boring way. And then I'll talk you through this for a second. Again, apologize for this being long, but I want this to be your one-stop shop video for trying to give you a best estimation of the differences. It's a lot of money to spend. And we're going to cover all our bases, okay? So I tried to get these close as I could here, right? Let's just see the very boring edit, and I'm going to show you the differences in editing, you know, something that's with a lot of color in it, and what I kind of have to do on the 100S that I don't have to do. So here on the 50S file for just a regular file, 50S2 I should say, but I think it's the same since they're just with the IBIS on it as the 50S and the 50R. All I did here, see, it's the punch, it's the pop. I just pulled the shadows up a little bit, vibrance up a little bit, and that's kind of it. Okay. So if we go over here to the 100S, I reset it, less shadows. This is what you kind of run into. I think the skin tone has less, it has less magenta in it. If I would come back to here, you'll see like a little bit more under his eyes and stuff. It's just a little bit more magenta. Could that be some of the magic sauce that people like, you know? So I feel like in the camera calibration, you have to kind of go up a little bit more on the magenta side just to kind of replicate that a little bit. And then to get it a little bit more punchy, I had to go, or just contrast, I would say, because contrast adds a little bit too much blacks, because we don't want the shadows to be too dark. So I pulled this up to like a 10, okay, to try to replicate these as much as I could. And I had to pull the vibrance up a lot higher on the 100S to try to get the same thing out of it. I'm at 61 here, and it just feels like a rounder contrasty file. And you still see there's shadows back here in this couch as I push them, and over here on the 100S file, and I'll put these side by side, they're starting to go a little bit dark back there, right? So when I do that, it starts to pull shadows up kind of just across the board, and then I pull the highlights down a little bit, and it's not apples to apples, and I think it's still a little bit low on color, so just to try to match the same thing. So I didn't touch any of the split toning on this, anything like that. So just a lot of color going on in this frame. That's why I chose it for a very boring, bland color. Now let's see them side by side and see 50S2 over here, 100S on the left. I don't know if I call it magic or not, but there's something definitely easier about editing the 50S2 files. But this is an incredible file. I like it. If you like that type of edit, I think that you can push sometimes the 50S2 files a little bit more because there's more contrast. You don't have to add contrast in before you start pushing it in different ways, you know. But I think the skin tones are better on the 100S. The magenta thing sometimes can rear its ugly head in different situations, like we just saw with the model against the brick wall, and red's around and red's around. I can get rid of it, but I usually have to take it into Photoshop and do a couple things there. But yeah, I don't actually know that there's a clear winner here. You guys can check these out and see. To me, the 50S2 files are easier to edit, but if you know what you're doing, you can get there with a 100S. And of course, I'm not even using any of the camera calibration. The profiles, the camera profiles, you know, because if I went into Adobe Color and I browsed here and then try to start seeing what I could get, it's one of these may get us a little closer to just straight away the same look. I can try Pro Negative High and then pull the shadows up a bit. But see, it's the thing with the shadows up a bit, they're just not the same. they're not the same. I don't know if that's a good or a bad way, but I feel like the 50S2 files that we're seeing right now are just easier. I kind of just do whatever you want, and it just kind of works, right? I don't feel that I can do whatever I want and still get a contrasty look here. Take this back to Adobe Color on the 100S. It's a little bit different, but see there, that's looking nice and punchy. It's just the skin tone. There's a lot of upper highs on the image that don't necessarily need to be there, and that just looks a little bit more natural and less pushed because I didn't have to push it much at all, right? There's ways to get around that if you know how to do your if you know how to work with curves and stuff like that. You can definitely match. It's just you're going to have to learn the sensor. All right, so now let's go into something that's completely subjective here with this. Just a fun color edit. It's more like an old school retro, and I had easier time matching this than I did the other. And this will be the last thing we do, just because I wanted to see like a more muted but fun edit. Sometimes I like pictures on my wall to be just something fun. Reset, 50S2, 100S, reset, and I could still see the colors are not as separated. I mean, I'm pushing it. I'm just trying to show you what I sometimes do. It seems like no matter what I do in certain scenarios, the shadows are, it's touchy sometimes, right? It's very touchy trying to get to the sweet spot, because I've only had this camera a little bit. I'm kind of sure that I could get there. Wouldn't be identical, obviously, because they're two different things, but I think that I could probably get there. That's just this is what I think people are talking about when they say the magic, not necessarily talking about what I did to it, but what I didn't have to do to it. There is a difference. The colors are almost identical, right? As much as you can get out of two totally different sensors. And this is still loading, so don't, okay, there you go. But the color separation here, and when I push, it doesn't just go into every different color, every different hue, I think. And over here, I'm already starting to lose a little bit of just the punch, right? So, I mean, and that's I wouldn't call it a hyper edit. It's just an artsy edit. If you don't do that type of stuff, I think you'll be okay with the 100S. These two files pushed about, the same, are similar enough. 100S, 50S. Okay, I've given you as much as I can possibly give you guys and my thoughts. If the difference between these two files doesn't bother you at all, then I think if you want the better autofocus, let me just do this and I'll wrap this up, and you can just hear me talk for a second and give you my thoughts, because this is just to help you make a better decision. Thank you to Fuji for loaning me this camera. I honestly don't want to give it back, but I have to, or I owe them $6,000. That I had more fun using it because it just works. It just gets out of my way and I get the shots, and I don't have to have auto review on all the time, and I don't miss shots in between, and I don't have to like force myself to believe that the file is going to look amazing like I know it always does on the 50S2, but the LCD looks so bad compared to every other. I don't care how many dots per inch it has, the LCD is blocky. It's the color, maybe it's the processing, it's contrasty to a fault. I've tried all different types of messing with it and different profiles, and I can't get it to where it just looks like I know this file looks great because I'm looking at it right here and it looks great. On the 100S, it looks really similar to my R5 LCD viewfinder, and I did have the boost mode on there on the 100S to kind of boost the, I guess it's boosting the resolution or the processing to the screen, I don't know, but it looked great. All I can say is it looked great, and it showed me a less contrasty, more true to life representation of what I'm going to get when I look at that raw file on my computer. I know when I take a shot on the 50S2 and I hit it and it looks great, but it's really blocky and kind of contrasty, that it's going to be fine. I just have to believe that, you know, and that sometimes messes with me, especially when I'm going back and forth with the R5, because I just pick it up and I'm like, bam, 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 okay, well, I know that this is not going to look as good when I put it on my computer, but as good as what? Nobody's going to see the other file because I didn't take one with it, and I can edit it just fine. You know, I've learned that camera inside and out, and it's incredible. But seeing what you want to see in a camera is important, and the autofocus. The speed for a high resolution camera, medium format camera, was really something to write home about. You saw the test where I'm doing the continuous. You cannot do that on the 50 series with rapid AF, with anything. You can actually do it in slow moving things on the 100S. Forget continuous, just go to single shot. If you want to use face detect, eye detect on the 50S2, I just wouldn't do it. It's too much to be lost. If you miss a shot, what's the use? I mean, you can just put it on the smallest point and keep the person wherever you want them in the frame, because you're always going to have them right where that dot is on their eye. Okay, and it's going to focus faster because it knows exactly where it wants to go. On the 100S, single shot, face detect worked a lot of the times in a bunch of different lighting scenarios. Still wouldn't use it because I don't like that. It's a little bit slower than what I would actually like, just single point, small, and then bam, 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 and you're done. But when I say bam, bam, bam on the 100S, it doesn't pulsate. It doesn't every 5 shots go to infinity and back. It doesn't kind of get stuck here and there. It just hits and it goes to the next shot. So I don't think the blackout was the biggest issue between the two cameras. I think it's the time that it's spent focusing before it hits, and then the blackout on top of that makes it feel like it's longer in between shots. You're not having that longer focusing time in between shots with the 100S, and when it gets it, you have it, even if the person's moving a little bit. It just feels like it's on steroids, horsepower, and makes you want to use the camera. You can see what you're looking at, true representation. It's usable in a bunch of different modes, continuous, very slow speed movement. Face detect and eye detect works within reason. You know, it's actually usable for certain things, and you just have to get to know your camera. And just single shot is a lot better, right? I've been getting along with my 50S2. I'm not trying to sell anybody on anything. I'm just trying to give you the best representation of what is what and what you're going to get with both. Easier to edit files on the 50S2. My opinion, probably going to be a lot of people that disagree with me that are really, remember, small sample size, guys, are really using the 100S a lot and getting incredible images, because I've seen a ton of them. I've seen so many that I questioned it myself. Is it there? And it could just be a Lightroom thing. Capture One might do a way better job. So you have to take all that into consideration. For me, I'm still on the fence because it's not my main camera. If it was my main camera, I'd have to go with the 100S because I can't afford to miss shots, right? That's something that I'm just loving the files on and shooting as a secondary camera. The 50S2 and the GFX is fine for me because I already have the person where I want them. I'm getting the shots with the R5, and then I pick that up and get a couple extra shots, and usually end up liking the GFX files better. But I use the Canon R5 to kind of get the moment going, right? So there's a lot to unpack here. download everything, rewatch this as many times as you want to, all the chapter points. I love you guys. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll update you if I do move up, right? And let you know long term what I do think. But small sample size, I'm still on the fence. Everything about the 100S I love. It fixed everything that I did not like about the 50S2. I just kind of still wish it had the 50S2 sensor, because it wouldn't be a learning curve for me, right? I think you can get there. I really do. I just think it's going to be a different editing process. So, love you guys. Until next time, it's Marcus. See you later.